Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Transforming 45. I'm your host, Lisa Boat. In this podcast, we dive deep into the transformative power of storytelling. I firmly believe that stories have the magical ability to heal, inspire, and connect us. That's why I'm here to bring you the incredible stories of women who have journeyed through life's ups and downs and emerged as their most authentic selves. We'll explore stories of resilience, reinvention, and the courage it takes to embrace change. It's a space where authenticity shines. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week we have a real change of pace, my friends. It has been predominantly female presenting women who have been on my show for the most part. And so this week I am really excited to have Paul Galloro. His tagline on his website just lit me up when I read it, and it really made me smile. A sunbeam dancing through life. Award-winning soul coach, metaphysical minister, wellness educator, innovator, yoga therapist, and soul coach. His goal is to show others that love, joy, and miracles are not only possible, but a birthright you can attain. I have been looking forward to this conversation, and I'm so glad that you are here today.
Oh, Lisa, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. I love you. We were just talking about our big three a moment ago, and that just affirmed why I love you so much.
Oh,
So I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
yeah. Well, again, I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be a great conversation between some spicy folks, so it'll be good.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so Paul, tell me, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
Oh, okay. I the only way that I can answer this question really is I'm a sunbeam dancing through life, like you said, as you saw on my website. Um, I don't necessarily like labels. Yes, I hold all those titles, which are lovely and great. Um, but really, when I sit back and I look, because I don't even know how to answer the question normally, right? So
Mhm.
I sort of feel like I just showed up and here I am. Although I do know that there have been life experiences that brought me to this place and I can speak to them. But really, that's how I can just describe myself. I don't often even use terms like man or gay man or any of those other labels because just for me, I just feel like this energy that's floating around in this body. Well, not floating in this body, but inhabiting this body
Yes.
and being here. Um, and all of the life experiences that brought me here, I think one of the biggest things, and it's what I would say brought me to the work that I'm doing today, and the work that I'm doing in really the way I see it is helping people accentuate the joy that is already within them. Joy is a birthright. It is actually, I believe, it's the energy of who we are. Um, it's inherent within us. You know, a lot of people say like, "What brings you joy?" I don't think joy needs to be brought to us. It's already within us, and we just need to get the stuff out of the way so it can, beam through our faces. So really, the thing that brought me to this place where I want to help other people find that joy with, not even find that joy, but reveal that joy within themselves was in 2008. I had this flare up of ulcerative colitis, and I was working in fitness at the time, and I was doing all the high cardio impact stuff, thinking that I was this big macho guy, well, trying to be a big macho guy. And I ripped my insides apart, and physically, mentally, emotionally, there was a lot of stuff that had happened that the world, the universe just said, okay, dude, you got to slow down. You can't do this anymore. You got to stop. You got to make these changes. Now, I had had a spiritual practice before that. I mean, if I'm being honest, Madonna got me into yoga,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, she did. Of course. Didn't she? All of us
So
Gen
it
Xers?
exactly. So in like 98, she's talking about doing yoga. I ran to the library, I rented a VHS tape, and I did it thinking I was spiritual, but I was always curious about that the spirituality, right? I grew up Catholic. That's how I was raised. In Catholic school, they allowed us one half semester to learn to study world religions, and that was like in our 12th grade 12. That wasn't even in the early years. And so we got a little taste of what other religions looked like. And I never really resonated with the stuff that I was taught in the Catholic Church. You know, growing up as a little gay boy, hearing that that's a sin and bad, and I was just like, but I feel this is me. How can it be wrong? And I just didn't like it. So
Uh-huh.
when I started to in grade 12, we looked at Wicca, we looked at Judaism, which I I mean my partner's Jewish. I've learned so much about Judaism like later on in life. They don't share that kind of stuff in Catholic school. We looked at First Nations, we looked at Hindu, we looked at everything, and I was in heaven, like learning about all and I was just like, oh my gosh, we're all saying the same thing. We're just saying it in different ways. How beautiful is this for us to come together? And it was in that moment and I'm talking all over the place. I'm super excited to be here. I'm also neurodivergent, so I don't go in a straight line. I'll be all over the place. Thanks for following me.
I love
Uh,
it. It's how my brain works too.
um,
I'm with you.
grade 12, I'm introduced to more than what I thought life was, what I thought spirituality was. Then Madonna's telling me to do yoga. Then I start to tie all these things together. And after high school, I started to explore different things. I I always had. I'm really much very much into astrology. And I was always interested. Like I remember um, when I was younger, my dad would get the Sunday Sun, the newspaper, and I would read. I would look for the Sunshine Boy very discreetly, and then I would read my horoscope. And I always had that connection to astrology. But it was after high school I started to study a little bit more, and I had a spiritual practice that I didn't really know was a spiritual practice until I was brought to my knees in 2008 with this health scare. I told you I'd bring it back. I brought to my knees, and I'm like, things had to change. And at that point, the universe said, the message that I received from the universe was, you're doing all these things that your body's not supposed to be doing. You even know this. You're trying to fit in and be something that you're not. Cut it out and put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. Do all the things that you have been saying in your spiritual practice and actually live that now. And so I started, in 2008 trying. And then in 2018, again, brought to my knees, life just happened and I couldn't take it anymore. And so at the time, I had a yoga studio. I was presenting fitness conferences, leading yoga trainings all over the planet, and I couldn't do it anymore. So I sold my stuff, packed up my apartment, left everything with my sister, and I hopped in an airplane and I went to Italy and I stayed there. And again, the universe was saying, you're talking about all this spiritual stuff, girl, you gotta, do these things now. And in 2018, went on this journey that again brought me around the world for myself this time. And yeah, and then I've just been trying to help other people accentuate that from within, live the joyful life that we're meant to be living.
Uh-huh.
In a nutshell.
There are so many things I want to pull out of that story. And first of all, thank you. Thank you for giving us all of that perspective. And it's one of the things that I think is really important about this conversation. So at the beginning, I said, I've mostly had women on the show. And when we pull back all of the perceived physical layers, we all have a very similar story and lived reality. It's just expressed and experienced in different ways. And I think at this juncture in time that we are living in, the more that we can see each other's humanity and heart and recognize that there is so much connection and similar lived experience and reality, the better we all will be.
Mm-hmm. And so it is. I'm holding my hands up like this because I'm receiving it, and I'm also sending lots of love, because what you just said there is, I think, something that needs to be amplified so that it gets into everybody's awareness, so that we can all see life like that. and
Nice.
experience life like that.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, I spent like in my first career working for the federal government, I worked in HR and it was
Right.
primarily women. I've always had women friends. I've always been in spaces where it was mostly women and me. I don't know what, well, I can guess, but all I know is that I love feminine energy. I feel very connected to it. But in 2018, after I came back from all of my travels in 2018, in 2019, I went to do a men's workshop. It was I can't remember exactly how they presented it, but it was an opportunity for men to bond around their emotional things. We did a lot of somatic work. We did there was a lot of brotherhood things, and prior to that, I'd been sitting in share circles with women at yoga retreats and yoga trainings. I was leading them. I was experiencing them. I decided to go do this men's retreat, and I'm the only gay man there. I didn't even say that to anybody, and I'm just sitting there, and everybody was, they're all straight guys, they're married with children or their girlfriends or whatever. They're hunting, they're doing like some like what I would consider macho things. And every single one of them, I saw myself reflected. And I was like, yes, okay, these bros are also experiencing the same thing that I am. Maybe they don't feel comfortable share like I have no qualms getting on a podcast and talking about all my heart, right? My podcast is called Heart to Heart because I love talking about people's hearts.
Yeah.
Not every man is in a place that they would do that, but it just made me see the world a little bit, especially because for those first 37 years of my life, I was scared of straight men just
Mhm.
because of the experience I had with them. Um, but it was just interesting to see. So to
Yeah.
your point of, yeah, we're all here experiencing the same thing. It just shows up differently.
Mhm.
And that's beautiful.
It is. And it's, while you were talking, I was thinking about it's interesting that so much of my work is connected to the feminine. And I wanted to sort of shift to like feminine, masculine, because we're talking in very binary terms, and we know how expansive actually who we are as humans truthfully
Totally.
is. And I live in a house of men. So it's this really great perspective. But every year I have this Facebook memory that comes up and it gets me every time because there was one evening when I was putting them to bed. My kids are in their late teens now, but this is when they were or I think they were about 10 and 11. And I went into my oldest son's room and he had our dog and she was curled up right beside him and I was singing him a lullaby and I was singing as I was singing to him he was singing to her and
Mm.
singing to her this lullaby. And as I was saying goodnight, she kind of like snuggled up right into his face and he was like, "Oh, her nose is on my cheek. That's how I know she's really asleep." And then I went into my youngest child's room. Same evening, I walk across the hall and he has this box on his bed in which he had made this nest for his, like, he had a little stuffed eagle that was his favorite stuffy in the moment. He's like, "Look, Mom, I put this blanket down and I have this blanket over top to make sure that eagle doesn't get cold at night." And I walked out of their rooms and I walked downstairs and I wrote this post because it is so clear when we are working with young humans who haven't been as influenced yet by all of the external experiences, messages, programming that's out there, that they have the most soft, gentle, beautiful hearts. And in that moment for me as a mom of two boys, I knew that it was a huge responsibility for me to hold space for them to keep their hearts soft and gentle in that way.
Yes.
Yeah. And speaking from an educator, I have seen that for decades with young humans, right? And just how open their hearts are, and that is our truth, right?
Mhm.
That is the truth of who we are as humans.
Absolutely. Oh, My gosh. First of all, I love that. Thank you for raising those humans to be so nurturing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think, is it that, like you said, that is available to all of us, that is within all of us. But I don't see it so much nowadays. Nowadays, this is me speaking like I'm back in my day. But honestly, I think it's so refreshing to see that everyone, regardless. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move. The sun is coming into my retinas right now.
Yeah.
But everyone, regardless of gender, it's not even that. We're all more into this space where we can tap into that outward masculine energy when we need it. And
Mm-hmm.
then also we can tap into that inward feminine energy when we need it. And I still see there's some people that might still be fighting that natural
Mm-hmm.
energy that comes through us. I know plenty of males that are very nurturing, are very feminine in their approach to life, but in it's that nurturing, it's that receiving to give kind of
Mm-hmm.
energy,
Yeah.
which yeah.
Yeah. And it is that I think fluidity, well, you just said it, right? Fluidity is actually our natural state.
Yeah.
Right. And when we are able to disconnect from all of the stories that we're told about, what a girl should look like or what a boy should do or all of the preconceived notions that are out there and just really tap into, and it kind of goes to your tagline, a sunbeam dancing through life. If we are able to just actually connect to the energy that is the truth of who we are, all the other things are just roles that we play in the world. Right.
Yeah.
So when we're actually able to connect to that energy, it is a state of fluidity and being able to flow in and out of what is the skill and tool or ability or emotion that I need in this moment right now.
Yes. And it's so interesting because there are times where, we know how to do that for other things. Do you know what I mean? Like when it
Yes.
comes to and so I see I'm trying to I, my brain is going so quickly. I'm trying to see how I can say this. Like to me, the corporate world is very masculine in the approach that it's like it's competitive, it's go, it's so it doesn't matter the gender that, but the corporate world is very masculine like that. And in those areas, we know, and I don't know why LinkedIn is in my head right now, but in those areas, we know
Mm-hmm.
when to use these soft skills, when to use these hard skills. But when it comes to the interaction, which again is if we're going to look at the energetic qualities of it, it's that feminine in nature of that that softening and being in a giving and receiving exchange, this reciprocity of that sharing. It's 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 like gone on us, I think. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't come so easily to some. And whether that's just from like the programming that we receive now, I think it's a little bit more it's 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 easier for us to connect because of experience of the stuff that we are learning about ourselves, about us as human beings, about our nervous systems, about what we
Mm-hmm.
need to be well. I think
Yes.
it all comes from, that wellness aspect of it, but not just the physical wellness, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Mm-hmm. And while you were talking, it made me think about what you were saying at the beginning about joy being a birthright. Because I think if we are in a place where we recognize that our set point actually is joy, right? This life is meant to be joyful. And I think joyful is a powerful word because happiness sometimes can feel a little surface, but joy
Mhm.
is something that we can feel in all circumstances, right? Even when we're grieving, right? Like
Yes.
when I think about when my mom passed away, it was remarkably painful, right? It was really, really difficult. But there were also these moments of deep joy. And I think about, I was the one who was with her when she actually passed away. I was alone with her. And I think that that was the only way she was going to go. I think she was, and I said to her, would you just stop being so stubborn? Because she was suffering, right? She was
Yeah.
suffering. It was painful to watch. And she lived her life in a very stubborn way right to the very end. But when she did let go, after being in real pain for a long time, her physical body smiled the moment she left. And I
Wow.
remember, yeah, yeah. And it was that moment where I was like, oh, yeah, that's like, this physical space is just one piece of our larger story. And I walked out of her room and I went to the end of the hall, and there was a window that looked out to um, a stream that was flowing and beautiful fall foliage. And it had been dark and gray and stormy for 3 days. And about an hour after she passed away, the sun came out. So I was looking out at the sun lighting up the foliage and the river running. And I thought, this is joyful, right? Even though it was painful, there was joy in the release and the beauty of knowing that life continues in ways we see
Yeah.
and ways we don't see.
Yes. Oh, as you were saying that, like I can picture that what my brain interprets as that all scene that you were describing, and I could see this energy that I perceive as your mom frolicking through that joyfully.
Yes. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that, because that's a beautiful example of exactly what you just said there about that. For me, I think, well, my experience is that people confuse joy and happiness,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And think that joy has to be, cartwheels and all of that stuff. When really, if we think about it, to me, love, joy, creation,
Mhm.
it's the same energy, right? It's that
Yes.
energy that, like, even in, I know this is sad. I'm going to grieve this for the rest of my life. I'm going to carry this experience with me. And also, flowers are going to continue blooming. The sun's
Mhm.
going to shine. I'm going to watch my children grow. All of these things that is a continuation of life is
Yeah.
still there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we're able to use that as our set point,
Yeah.
it seems to me that it would make that then it becomes a place where you can accept being fluid, where you can accept being able to go with the flow of life a little bit more. But it's when we are really entrenched in that space of fear and scarcity that can block those experiences of joy that allow us to really have those connections with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, I think there's so much messaging out there that creates those things that block us from doing that it becomes almost like, I think I've read something. I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's an act of rebellion
Yes.
to
Yeah.
to strip away all of those things that we've been fed to block that joy from pouring forth from us, right? Because I mean, suffering sells more, or you can make more money off of suffering than you can off of joy.
Mhm.
So I totally understand that that's how that world works. But yeah, it really is the work. And I mean, I had to do a lot of work within myself to
Yeah.
peel back those layers so I can get to that place where it pours out of me. And also, I remember being, because I always, not only did I hang out with a lot of women, I hung out with a lot of older people when I was growing up. I was the youngest of three. So my sisters were always older than me. I was always hanging out with their friends. That when I went when I was growing up, I was always hanging out with older people. And I remember hearing a lot, oh, once you turn 40, life is different. They would say to me as I'm freaking out about things in my 20s and 30s, I'm like, yeah, wait till you turn 40. I never understood that until I turned 40. And then I was
Hmm.
like, ah, now
Yes.
I get it.
Yeah.
Now all of that stuff that I worried about and that I spent a lot of my life force energy thinking about
Hmm.
is like I don't know. Did you experience that? It's just like something happens and it just goes poof, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm fabulous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny now. So I'm turning 47 this year. So when I see, but I have friends who are just sort of entering their 40s and I see them entering it with such trepidation. And I remember being 39 and having some real existential like feelings about turning 40, but it has been the best decade to date. Right. And I remember, a really powerful woman in my life said, Lisa, it just keeps getting better. And I did not believe her. I really didn't. I thought, like, how, as you age, that's not the story. Right. But it is. That is the story. And it's positioning, I think people like you who are out in the world doing this work and positioning aging as liberation, and that's the work I'm doing too, is it's really necessary to start building up this narrative about what it actually means to enter into this phase of life, to age and not be afraid of it, but value it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that
It's it.
you
Sorry,
go,
you go.
oh, no, no, go ahead.
So I was probably like what in my early 20s when I read Louise Hay's "You Can Heal Your Life." Are you familiar
Mm-hmm.
with this book?
Yeah.
Okay, life change. So funny story, sidebar. I'll get back to this in a second. But I remember that book came into my life. I was in college. I was living with my housemate, and I walked into the kitchen. I was like, I want to read a book, like a book that's going to change my life. And in my head, and I actually said to my housemate, I was like, I want to read like a book about Cher. I feel like Cher has undergone some like adversity that she's overcome, and I want to read about it.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, she's like, I don't have Cher's biography, but I have this book. And I looked at the title and I'm like, You Can Heal Your Life. I'm like, I don't know about that. I'm literally
Yeah.
asking for something that's going to change my life. This book is called You Can Heal Your Life. I remember a line that Louise Hay says in that book is, I'm fabulous at any age. And that has been something that I've carried with me since then. Because I remember being like in my early 20s and my friends going, we're 21. We're so old. I'm like, what? We're just getting started. And
Yeah.
like, I'm curious to know how they feel about saying that now that we're in our 40s. You know what I mean? But I've always, and actually today, I was having a conversation. I was texting with a friend because I saw this Instagram thing where the generations were talking to each other, and one of them was like, "Oh, I'm watching like a classic movie," and the other person was like, "Oh, what movie? Like, from the '80s?" And she's like, "No, from the 2000s. I'm talking Mean Girls." And what I was like, "Oh my God, that's right. A movie from the 2000s that was
Yeah.
like nothing to me
Yeah.
is classic now." And then they get into this discussion, and the other one's like, well, when you were watching this movie, how old was like when you were watching Breakfast Club, how old was this? Like 25. It's like, yeah, that's Mean Girls. So I'm sharing it with my
Yeah.
friend, and like my friend is like, oh my God, yeah, it's all downhill from here. I was like, girl, I don't even have those words in my vernacular because I don't know what that means. All I know is that I'm fabulous at any age. And it's just, like you said, it's just going to keep getting better. I mean, that's
Yeah.
been my experience so far anyway, right?
Absolutely. And I feel like, you said we're just getting started at 20. I feel like that now. I
Yeah.
feel like I am just getting started. I mean, I talk about this a lot on the show because most of the guests are sort of in the same space, but this is the space, this is the time where I get to live my life for me now. Because up until this point, I mean, even when I was younger and thinking I was making decisions of my own volition, upon reflection, I realized no, it was still under the gaze of so many people, right? Like I was
Right.
making decisions to make sure that my parents were happy and thought that I was doing the right thing and that were perhaps what was in the best interest of my life path at the time. But they were heavily influenced by other people's expectations and experiences I was having at that time. But now at this phase, I get to actually figure out, who am I in this world? Who am I going to continue to be? And how do I want to live my life so I keep getting to know this next best version of myself?
Yeah,
Yeah. And
totally.
it's really exciting.
Yeah, you know what? And I think it comes again, is it the age thing? Is it the experience? But I remember to what you were saying, like in my 20s and even in my 30s, I was like, oh, I have to be like this. Life is going to be great when it's like this. And it was always this fixed point. And then it's like once you start to realize, and for me, anyways, when I got to the point where I was like, oh, this is just a cycle. This keeps on going. This is an evolution. This is growth. This is like me watching something go from a seed to a giant tree. It's not gonna go like boom, like in a moment. It's watching the process unfold and not only watching it, but like experiencing the process. And I think that is the beauty of aging as we, and I don't even like that word aging, but becoming more chronologically advanced. The
Yeah.
beauty of that
Our
is that we
evolution.
exactly we get to experience that moment breath by breath, and
Yes.
especially when we're when it's people like us that are introspective and are self-aware and are watching everything unfold without I speak for myself. I'm doing my best now not to manipulate it, like making the decisions and holding myself in the space that I want it to be, but not trying to contort it to be what somebody else or what my mind thinks it should be, but really feeling it in my heart and letting that be. I think it's wonderful. I mean, I'm looking at the trees that are outside of this window and having seen them shift and transform over
Mm.
years, you don't appreciate what it's like when it's a little tiny skinny thing and then it gets like thicker and stronger. But when you've done that, then you're like, you can appreciate the work that goes into evolving.
Yeah. And it also, I'm finding, is a time where I'm setting other people free as well.
Yeah.
Because one, by doing that for ourselves and modeling that, it opens up freedom for everybody else. But I don't know about you if you've had this experience, but I've recently also realized how much of like a narrative and a story I wrote about other people that I absolutely thought was true, and it's not
Okay.
even like it's not even, like, not necessarily negative even, but I was having breakfast with a long time friend, and he said, oh yeah, I would never be confident enough to do that. And in the moment, I had this moment of like, oh, I need to, that's something. And he said it actually a couple of times, and as I was reflecting back, I realized I had written a story about him for myself, that he was always the most confident person in the room. And that he's always had this kind of mysterious air about him. And I thought, oh, he uses that like mystery as a way of, I'm not exactly sure what I thought, but I really thought confidence was like who he was. And to hear him say out loud, it was this moment of realization of, oh, shit, I have written a story about him that is not remotely true. And now I can listen. I can listen in different ways because I know it is not my job to write the stories of other people. It's my
Yeah.
job to write my own story and to open up space for them to tell me their stories and to witness them.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's a lot to reflect there because I've had um I can see where I've done that in myself and also kind of been on the receiving end. I also think um there for myself where I thought I was confident and then I got to a certain point I was like, "Oh, girl, that wasn't confidence. That was like that was being far from confident and you just trying to pretend you were doing that fake it till you make it thing, but you were really faking it and not making it."
Yeah.
Until I and then and it's interesting because I almost feel like once I said to myself, "Oh, you're not confident." Actually, there's some things that scare the shit out of you, but good for you, you're doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think is that feels different in my body now, even as I reflect back on
Yeah.
life and my experiences.
Yeah, that is a really powerful shift because it's you telling the truth, right? Rather than creating a smokescreen.
Yeah, yeah,
Because that's what we do sometimes. And I 100% relate. Like I can look back and think, oh, ooh, yeah, you are trying to project confidence.
yeah,
And I'm not sure it landed the way you wanted it to land. And it really wasn't the truth of how you were feeling. Oh, maybe that's why that went the way it went. Right. Got it.
yeah, yeah. But I still love you for trying.
Yes. And look at us
Uh,
now, right?
exactly. Exactly. That's what I always say. And look at us now.
Yeah.
Um, there's something that when you were talking about um, us being ourselves to free others. Um, so this has come up a lot for me in my career, in my
Mm.
life. I throw I love you around like it's glitter, like biodegradable glitter, not the bad stuff. But but like I truly mean it. As a Leo, as someone who I consider myself to be heart-centered, when I say to somebody, I love you, I'm like, do I want to marry you, Lisa? No. I know you've got your own thing, I've got mine. But I love you as a human being. I love you just because you showed up in front of me today and we're in this experience. I'm trying to learn to love people in the same way that show up in my life to challenge me. That's a whole other thing.
Mm.
But I've been doing it for years, and I remember even like at work, I would sign because working in fitness to me, I just figured we're all here because we love what we do. Like I don't take anything seriously in life but my joy, and I don't take myself seriously at work either. So I used to like send an email to my manager, "Hey, hugs, love you," something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I would always get this feedback like, "Ooh, we got to be a little bit more professional." And recently, and I've talked about this before, and I'm talking about it again because it's something that like landed, but I also feel there's a new development. But so when I'm teaching a class, I like to use gender neutral terminology to refer to everyone
Mm.
in the room. But I'm also a little flamboyant and everybody like, "Hey everybody," and "Hey friends." It's a little too like, for lack of a better word, too basic for me.
Yes.
It works for some people, it's not my thing. So because I see everyone as a lover, anybody who is here to give and receive love, anyone who's willing to do the work to bring more love to the planet, I consider a lover. Just as a
Mm.
runner runs and a painter paints, a lover loves. That's
I
all it
love it.
is.
Yeah.
And I know some people, I know that there is a definition of lover that means a romantic partner. Sure, that's not how I use it. And especially when I'm with a new group, I say, "Hey, I'm going to refer to this group as lovers, just as painter, blah, blah, that whole thing." And I was told in this one space, don't use that word. Don't call people lover. They might perceive it as you're saying, "Be my lover." And, people are already uncomfortable coming into this space and it might make them more uncomfortable. And they said, wait until, it would be acceptable. And the way I received it, and maybe it was the day and the time that I read the email, but the way I received it was like, tell me, you can't be your full self
Mm.
here. until you're accepted. And I'm like, I thought to myself, I've lived my life contorting myself to fit into other people's things, ideas. I'm not doing it anymore. So either you want me in this space or you don't. But I just said, okay, thank you for the feedback. My partner had to talk me off the ledge. She's like, you sure you want to send that email? So, anyways, I just said, thank you for the feedback. I had some time to think about it, and I decided to go back into that space and clearly explain myself to the group once again. And every single person in that group was like, thank you. Oh my God, I love that. One person actually sent me an email and said, I really appreciate that you say I love you to everyone. It's really inspiring, and I want to be more like that.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm so glad that I stuck to my guns and said, I'm not gonna start. We need to hear more I love yous and love in this world coming from a place of like meaning it. It's not a time to like stop that. So, um, anyways, that was just the thing that came to me when you said like it frees people, and I just love that idea that this individual that reached out to me and said, "Hey, now I want to do more of that." I hope feels like they can do it because I've done it, and I got the shit kicked out of me many times every time I've done it, and now it's just making it easier for them, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the wisdom, I think, of getting to this place where you really have decided, oh no, this is who I am and this is how I'm showing up in the world. And the most loving thing I can do is to always be this person, right? And
Yeah.
it's always fascinating to me because I don't know if it's our colonial nature or the structure of patriarchy that makes us think that love is a scarcity, right?
Mm,
Love is an infinite resource, and the human heart is capable of mass quantities of love. Like there is no love that
yeah.
we are incapable of,
Yeah.
right? So it is getting comfortable with that, and that is the truth of our humanity is that, yeah, and when we can build those actual relationships and rapport with people where they really feel what we are feeling, that is what makes it possible to have that kind of communication, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I am taking a course right now, and when just going back to what you were saying about when people in your life challenge you, because we all have we all have those people. And the leader, my mentor in this course, said, if you can look at that human as someone who is a being of infinite light, and they have put on a cloak of darkness so that they can give you the experience you need to know what it is to forgive, and they are willing to do that and experience that pain because they love you that much. And I just thought, wow, that is
Mhm.
a shift of perspective. When
Yeah.
you think about those people in your life that you feel are so challenging, or you feel that hint of like, ooh, when you look at them and know they are beings of light, and wearing that cloak is really painful and it's a sacrifice, it can really change the way you show up with that person.
Yeah. Uh, oh gosh, I my heart loves that. I have to say, my humanity not so much, but my heart is feeling that.
Yeah.
But I definitely see what you're saying there, and I mean, gosh, I'm working on it, but that is a beautiful shift because that just transforms everything, I think.
Yeah, it
It
really does.
softens.
It does. It is softening and it is challenging. Like I am not going to sit here and go, yeah, I got that skill nailed. That is not the truth. The truth.
Which module do I master
Yeah,
that?
right. However, I do think approaching, like, even if you look at world leaders and you think they have taken on this cloak of darkness to show us all what that is. It is not an invitation to accept the behavior or the consequences. it's not an invitation to that, but it certainly is a way into how can I communicate with this person in a way that actually honors the humanity of everybody. And there's potential of shift in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that reminder because I mean, yeah, we can look at the leaders of this world and throw all of that stuff that we think they're throwing out, throw back at them, which only contributes to the problem,
Yeah.
and not actually finding a solution. But then going back to that thing, I'm a huge follower of Marianne Williamson. I'm a
Mhm.
student of A Course in Miracles. And so I've attended a lot of her talks, and she always says, love will say no. Love will say not on my watch. And that is, I think, to your point, where it's not acceptance. And we're not saying, yes, keep on treating us this way and keep on behaving in this way.
Mhm.
No to that. But being loving in our approach so that we're not, MLK said you can't fight darkness with darkness. You got to bring the light.
Yeah.
So that's that reminder there, um, for when we get into those moments that, oh, that my humanity and my Scorpio tendencies really come out. And
Yeah.
you know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
Oh, I sure do. And yeah, speaking from the bull, I can also I can relate.
Yeah.
Paul, you are absolutely a being of light in this world. We didn't talk about any of the things I thought we were going to talk about, but I feel like this conversation was exactly what it needed to be today. You were doing for our listeners that are local, you were doing some brilliant work in our community. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, what work are we talking about?
Well, so you have an Arise group, you've got,
Yes.
lots of things that are happening.
Yeah, so I guess one of my biggest things that I'm doing, and it's mostly virtual, is my Arise program. It's a daily program where we get together Monday to Friday for 30 minutes, and I take people through an experience of journaling, mindfulness, meditation. Every day of the week is focused on something different. It's informed by astrology because as an astrologer, I'm always bringing that in there, but it's more for us to start our day with a full cup because that is the most important thing. And it doesn't matter if you're a mom, if you're a dad, if you're anything, like everybody needs to start their day with a little mindfulness and a little intention. So that is something that is perpetual. It's ongoing every Monday to Friday. So if anyone's interested, thank you, Lisa, for bringing that up. And I invite you to check out my website. And I'm also doing a retreat in Italy. As an Italian,
No,
I love Italy
woman.
and I want people to experience the country. And because I ran back to Italy. I'm back to Italy. My parents came from there. I went back there to heal myself. And so I take people on retreat there for a week. So there's that as well. It's happening in September. And there's my podcast, which we're going to continue this conversation on my podcast because
Great.
I would love to have you. Like you said, there is so much more that we have to talk about. And I would love for you to be there. So I'm
Well, I
telling your
would.
listeners now to find you there.
Excellent. And I would love to continue this conversation. And a time will come when I come with you to Italy, because Italy is like my heart's home. I am telling you, I was born on the wrong continent.
Yeah. Girl, same.
All right. I will make sure that all of Paul's links are in the show notes so you can easily connect with him. And thank you so much for being here today. I love you too.
Oh, I love you so much. And thank you to all the listeners.
Thank you for joining us on this transformative journey today. Your support means the world to me. If you resonated with our conversations and want to uplift the Transforming 45 community, here's what you can do. 1, subscribe and share. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you found value here, share it with your friends, family, and anyone seeking inspiration.